Hi, this is Carlos Cousins. This is a sentence completion question. For this sort of question, the first thing you want to do is, yes, pay attention to your understanding of the vocabulary provided, but more importantly, and what I usually focus more on here is looking for words that might lead you to conclude something about the pairs of vocabulary that we're looking for in the answer choice, some keywords. So let's go ahead and see if we find any here. More upsetting than anyone anticipated, the discoveries about Jackson's private life have blank his spotless reputation and will inspire new blank of his work in the public sphere. Well, I don't really see any keywords for this particular problem, but we should be aware that this part here is describing the subject of the sentence, which is the discoveries about Jackson's private life. This is the subject. What they have done is going to be what is the verb action that is being taken, and what is being effective, the object, is his spotless reputation here. Then for this clause here, and, which we should consider as a separate sentence, we are assuming that these discoveries, the subject, will inspire new blank of his work in the public sphere. Whatever we are putting for these blanks, it has to be upsetting. So it has to produce a negative result such that the coherence is kept. So this is the only thing we're watching for, coherence. So let's go ahead and consider these answer choices and see which makes sense or not. More upsetting than anyone anticipated, the discoveries about Jackson's private life have dissipated his spotless reputation. So that makes sense. His spotless reputation isn't really there anymore, since that would cause some upsetting. And will inspire new experiments of his work in the public sphere. Well, experiment is iffy in that it could make sense, but why exactly are we experimenting? We don't know this, and we would have to assume something to come up with an answer to that question. In the context of a larger paragraph, if you were given some reason to understand why you would be experimenting on his work in any shape or form, that might make sense. But here, since we're incurring an assumption, that doesn't seem like a good question. Let's go ahead and consider this next one. More upsetting than anyone anticipated, the discoveries about Jackson's private life have undermined his spotless reputation, so that makes sense. It's less than spotless at this point, and will inspire new investigations of his work in the public sphere. Well, that makes sense. If his reputation isn't as good anymore, it makes sense that people will be checking over his work. They'll be investigating whether or not his work is good. So this seems like a good answer choice so far. It definitely satisfies coherence. Let's go ahead and try out the other ones. More upsetting than anyone anticipated, the discoveries about Jackson's private life have undercut his spotless reputation. So just like undermine, it is no longer as spotless as before. It's not spotless anymore, and will inspire new celebration of his work. Well, this doesn't make sense. The coherence here isn't kept in that if his work were being celebrated, he wouldn't be upset, and if his reputation were undercut, that wouldn't be cause for celebration. So that doesn't make sense. More upsetting than anyone anticipated, the discoveries about Jackson's private life have reinforced his spotless reputation. Well, if his reputation is spotless, then he wouldn't be upset about that. So this doesn't make sense already. And if you consider scrutiny, that would make sense for in the context of this problem, because that would mean that would lead you to assume that his reputation isn't as good, and that's something that he'd be upset about. But because of reinforces here, that doesn't make sense. And the last pair, more upsetting than anyone anticipated, the discoveries about Jackson's private life have questioned his spotless reputation. Well, this is a problem because discoveries don't question. Discoveries are simply discovered, and the people who made the discoveries would be questioning. So that doesn't make sense. And on top of that, that wouldn't inspire an honoring of his work. If it's being questioned right now, that means that it's not being taken as a credible source necessarily. So this is the best option by far. I hope that helped with this problem. Happy prepping, everybody.